Hey guys, Brandon Gomez here, back again with another video, and welcome to Rating Every Confirmed 2023 NASCAR Cup Series Paint Scheme, Part 3. This may or may not be the final part, depending on how many more schemes get revealed in the next 2 weeks. So, for now, let's just rate the confirmed paint schemes that we haven't rated yet. And before we start the video proper, I want to address that some teams opted not to change their paint schemes for the 2023 season. So, I'm going to go through them real quick. The jockey schemes remain a 10 out of 10. Austin Cindric's Freightliner scheme remains an 8 out of 10. The Interstate Battery scheme remains a 8 out of 10. And the Monster Energy scheme remains a 0 out of 10. With that out of the way, now we can get started. First up, we have Ross Chastain's Worldwide Express paint scheme. I like the design on this one. It's mostly light blue with a little bit of black, and then it's got arrows pointing every which way. Great design. 7 out of 10. Next up, we have Ross Chastain's Global Trans paint scheme. It's basically just his Worldwide Express scheme, but with a darker shade of blue. Honestly, I prefer the one with the lighter shade, but this one still looks good. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Ross Chastain's Unishippers paint scheme. This one is different from his other two Worldwide Express paint schemes because it's got multiple shades of blue and it's got white instead of black. And honestly, it just doesn't look as good as his other two paint schemes. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Ross Chastain's Advent Health paint scheme. Slight improvement over last year's scheme. They made a few changes to the design, and honestly, looks a little bit better. And I like that they still kept the little watermelon down on the side skirt. I like that touch. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Austin Dillon's Get Bioethanol paint scheme. I honestly don't know how to feel about this one. I don't think I'm vibing with the color combination here with the black and white and the light green. Just not my cup of tea. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Brad Keselowski's King's Hawaiian paint scheme. Honestly, a downgrade from last year's scheme. Last year's scheme had a little bit of blue on it, and it went well with the orange. And this year's is just orange with a little bit of white on it. And it just doesn't do it for me the same way that last year's scheme did. 4 out of 10. Next up, we have Brad Keselowski's Solomon Plumbing paint scheme. I like the design on this one. You got a little bit of white at the front, and then a green stripe going down the side of the car that fades in the black at the quarter panel there. Great design. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Corey LaJoie's Animal Control paint scheme. This is literally just an orange base color with raccoons and then some dude on the hood. I don't know who that is. And yeah, it's to promote some sort of Fox TV show called Animal Control, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't look good. 3 out of 10. Next up, we have Kyle Busch's 3 Cheap paint scheme. It's beautiful. The design is extremely simple, but there's just something about it that makes it amazing. I really hope that gold will actually be shiny on the track, because this is just a render, and it looks a little bit shiny, but hopefully when it races on track, that gold will really shine. And I think that's what makes this paint scheme so great. It's because of the gold. And yeah, not really much else to say about this paint scheme. It's beautiful. 10 out of 10. Next up, we have Chase Elliott's Kelley Blue Book paint scheme. It's the same one as last year's. The baby blue with the blue and yellow trim. Doesn't look good. 3 out of 10. Next up, we have Chase Elliott's Hooters Night Owl paint scheme. The Night Owl is back, and it's to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Hooters. And what better way to celebrate it than with this decent looking paint scheme. Although it looks rather incomplete, because the orange just cuts off at the fender. It doesn't extend to the other side around the front bumper. That's what this paint scheme is missing. Orange on the front bumper. If it had that orange, it'd be a 6 out of 10. But since the orange just cuts off at the fender, I'm docking off a point. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Denny Hamlin's Sport Clips paint scheme. Not much going on with this one. White base color, mostly red front bumper, black and red pattern on top of the side skirt. Nothing much to write home about. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Chase Briscoe's Rush Truck Center's paint scheme. I like the Gen 6 paint scheme better. The one that was half and half yellow and black with that little bit of red. That one was beautiful. But this one still looks decent enough with the mostly black and the yellow and red. Still looks decent. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Riley Herbst's Sunny D paint scheme. If you're a frequent viewer of the channel, you already know how I feel about the Sunny D paint schemes. Sunny D never misses with their paint schemes, and this one is no different. This paint scheme is absolutely beautiful. And the Monster Energy logo on the quarter panel does nothing to diminish the absolute beauty of this paint scheme. 10 out of 10. Next up, we have JJ Yaley's CWSons.com paint scheme. It's an alternating pattern of black and red with white trim separating the two colors. Simple design, and it gets the job done. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have AJ Allmendinger's Nutrient Ag Solutions paint scheme. Honestly, I'm neutral with this one. It's neither good nor bad. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have AJ Allmendinger's Action Industries paint scheme. It's mostly white with blue on the bottom, separated by yellow and red stripes. And that pattern also exists on the C-pillar there. Neat patterns gets the job done. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Christopher Bell's DeWalt Ream paint scheme. This was JJR's attempt at merging the DeWalt and Ream paint schemes. And it resulted in a bad paint scheme. 3 out of 10. Next up, we have Bubba Wallace's DoorDash paint scheme. Honestly, it's a downgrade from last year's paint scheme. But this year's scheme still looks decent enough. I believe last year I gave the DoorDash scheme a 7 out of 10. This year, slight downgrade, 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Justin Haley's Circle paint scheme. It's mostly white with a light blue to dark blue color gradient on the back of the car. And I like the little water splash design at the front of the car. Although that blue on the front bumper looks a little bit random. I feel like if it was if the whole front bumper was just a water splash, it'd look better. Don't know what that random blue is doing on the front bumper. But decent paint scheme. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Justin Haley's Celsius paint scheme. It's the same as Corey LaJoy and BJ McLeod's Celsius paint schemes. So I'll give it the same rating. 3 out of 10. Next up, we have Noah Gregson's Sunseeker Resort paint scheme. It's got a gray base color with light blue wavy stripes. Great design. But the orange roof number kind of ruins the paint scheme. It'd be a 7 out of 10, but because of the orange roof number, it gets a 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Eric Jones's Allegiant paint scheme. A lot of people have been saying that it's a good scheme, but I honestly don't feel the same way. The sun on the quarter panels is a nice touch, and so is the stripe on the top of the car. But that little orange, I guess, stripe down by the front wheel well, I don't know why that's there. It looks so random and out of place. And because of that, I just can't bring myself to like this paint scheme. Looks too weird for my liking. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Tyler Reddick's Moneyline paint scheme. I like the design on this one, with the black And the blue and green color gradient, really great looking paint scheme. 7 out of 10. Next up, we have Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s Velveeta paint scheme. I love the melting cheese design it has going down the side of the car. That's a really great design. And the hood logo isn't too far down. It's actually centered. But the top of the car is white. Why? JTG Doherty always has great paint scheme designs, but they kill their paint schemes by throwing in some other random color for no reason. This paint scheme could have been great, but they killed it by making the top of the car white for no reason. This paint scheme was such a missed opportunity. If the top of the car had the melting cheese design too, and the fender of the car was also red, then it'd be a 10 out of 10. But JTG fumbled the bag hard with this paint scheme. They never seem to have good paint schemes because they ruin them by throwing in random colors for no reason. And it's a crying shame too, because this paint scheme looked amazing from the side at least. From the top, it's killed. 0 out of 10. Next up, we have Cody Ware's Biohaven paint scheme. It's got a dark blue base color with a white, gray, and green color pattern. Not a fan of this paint scheme, honestly. Doesn't look good to me. 4 out of 10. Next up, we have Austin Hill's Bennett paint scheme. It's got a white base color with a little bit of light blue on the front bumper, dark blue on the back, and then different shades of blue stripes. Great design on this one. Simple, but great. 7 out of 10. And for our final paint scheme of part 3, we have Ty Dillon's NASCAR Fan Rewards paint scheme. It's got black on the top, white on the bottom, with the NASCAR blue, red, and yellow stripes going down the side of the car. Simple design, and it's executed well. 7 out of 10. And that concludes part 3 of rating every confirmed 2023 NASCAR Cup Series paint scheme. What do you think? Do you think some of these should have been given a higher rating? Do you think some should have been given a lower rating? How would you rate these paint schemes? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more of me, be sure to follow me on Instagram and join my Discord server. Links to both are in the description down below. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to my channel for more motorsports content. Thank you all so much for watching. That's it from me.